The morning heat clung to the streets of Lekki like perfume, thick and expensive. Tomowa wiped the sweat from her brow as she balanced her makeup kit on one arm. Another day, another job that barely paid transport. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Her phone buzzed, a strange number. "Miss Tomowa. You've been specially requested to handle makeup for Lady Ruth Edu at the Holy River Ministry's residence. Be there by 4 p.m. sharp." For a moment she froze. Lady Ruth Edu, wife of Pastor Ezra Edu, the man half of Nigeria worshipped. The man whose voice filled radios, whose face looked down from billboards with that divine half-smile that promised redemption. She said yes before her tongue could weigh the consequences. By evening she stood before the mansion, marble white with pillars tall enough to touch heaven. Inside, the air smelled of roses and sanctity. Everything was silent, too perfect, too rehearsed. Lady Ruth sat in front of the mirror, graceful but hollow-eyed. "You're Tomowa?" she asked softly. "Yes, Ma." "Good. My husband likes everything flawless." The name husband rolled off Ruth's lips like duty, not affection. Tomowa nodded, setting to work, her brushes whispering across the woman's face. But halfway through, the door creaked open. He entered. Pastor Ezra Edu. The air shifted. His presence filled the room before his voice did. His white shirt was rolled at the sleeves, collar loosened, eyes darker than every sermon she'd watched on TV. He smiled faintly. "So you're the artist who paints angels?" His words hit her chest like a soft drumbeat. "Yes, sir," she whispered. "Don't call me sir," he said. "I'm not your employer yet." Their eyes met in the mirror, hers wide and uncertain, his calm and unreadable. Ruth didn't notice. She was already checking her reflection, rehearsing her smile for tomorrow's crusade. But Tomowa felt something dangerous ignite inside her, something she had no prayer for. That night, she lay in her small apartment staring at the ceiling. Rain began to fall, steady and soft. Sleep came with visions of him, his hand reaching through the storm, his lips murmuring words that sounded like scripture and sin. When she woke, her heart was racing. She told herself it was just admiration. Delight. The next week, Tomowa returned to the mansion, this time with her hands steadier, but her heart far less obedient. Lady Ruth was warm but distracted, answering calls, flipping through outfit options for her next television appearance. "Pastor Ezra will be filming a new message soon," Ruth said casually. "I want to look like grace itself." "Yes, Ma," Tomowa replied, unpacking her brushes. But she could feel him before she saw him, that familiar pull in the air, like the world holding its breath. Ezra entered the room, dressed in black this time. His sleeves rolled up, veins showing. "Sister Tomowa," he greeted, voice calm, deep, commanding. Her name in his mouth felt heavier than any sermon. "Good afternoon, Pastor," she managed, trying not to look directly at him. He moved closer, stopping just behind her. "You're talented," he said quietly. "But your hands, they tremble when I'm near." Her brush froze midair. I'm just tired, sir." He smiled faintly. "Then rest." He walked away, leaving her breathless. But his scent lingered, sandalwood and something darker. Later, as she was packing up, Ruth's phone rang and she stepped outside to take the call. Tomowa was alone, until Ezra's voice came from the doorway. "Do you believe beauty is a gift or a curse?" He turned, startled. I think it depends on who's looking." He studied her face, his gaze slow, deliberate. "Then pray no man ever looks at you the way I do." The words hit her like thunder wrapped in silk. Her chest rose and fell as he turned and walked away, leaving the air trembling behind him. That night she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him, that look, that forbidden hunger. She prayed, but even her prayers felt sinful. The next morning, she found herself staring at her reflection before work, whispering, "He's a man of God, Tomowa. Don't be foolish." But when she arrived at the mansion again and he opened the door instead of Ruth, her pulse betrayed her. "Lady Ruth's at the studio," he said, stepping aside. "But I could use your company, if you're not afraid." Her lips parted, but no words came. She walked in, and the door closed softly behind her. Rain began as a whisper that evening, tapping against the mansion's tall windows. By nightfall it had become thunder, loud, wild, unforgiving. The power blinked out suddenly, plunging the corridors into darkness. Tomowa stood alone in the guest room, clutching her phone's dim light. Lady Ruth had traveled for a church retreat that morning. Only a few workers were around, scattered in other wings of the house. She lit candles to calm herself, their soft glow painting golden circles on the walls. Then she heard footsteps, slow, steady, deliberate. Ezra appeared at the doorway, half shadow, half man, a storm behind him. His white shirt was soaked through, clinging to his chest. Water trailed down his arms. He looked like a prophet and a sinner all at once. "I didn't mean to frighten you," he said, voice low. "The power's out everywhere. Are you all right?" She nodded, but her voice failed her. He stepped inside. The air thickened. She could smell rain and musk, a clean, masculine scent that reached somewhere she tried to bury. "I was praying," he said quietly. "But I couldn't focus. My thoughts kept wandering." "Wandering where?" she asked before she could stop herself. His eyes lifted to hers, dark, stormy, unflinching. "Here." Lightning flashed outside, bathing them in white for a moment. He took a step closer and another. "Tomowa," he breathed, her name trembling in the air. "I've fasted. I've begged God to take this from me. But each time I close my eyes," he paused, exhaling hard. "You're there." Her heart raced. She wanted to run, but her feet refused. "I should go," she whispered. "You should," he agreed. Neither of them moved. A drop of water slid from his hair down his jaw. Without thinking, she reached up and brushed it away. His breath caught. That single touch burned through the distance between them. Then his hand found hers, warm, strong, trembling. "This isn't holy," she whispered. "No," he murmured, "but it feels like truth." When his lips finally met hers, it was slow, reverent, not a kiss born of sin but of surrender. Her pulse echoed the rhythm of the rain. Every second felt dangerous, necessary, divine. And when he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. "God help me," he whispered. "I think I've already fallen." The storm had quieted, but its echoes still hummed through the mansion like a warning. Candles flickered low, their light trembling across the floor where clothes lay scattered. Evidence of a night neither of them had planned, yet both had craved in silence for too long. Tomowa's skin still burned with memory. The way his breath had brushed her ear, the way his voice had broken when he whispered her name like a confession. Every touch had been a plea for something deeper, something beyond prayer or forgiveness. Now dawn crept through the curtains, gold and cruel. She sat on the edge of the bed, the white sheet drawn to her chest. Her heart pounded softly in the silence between them. Ezra stood near the window, back turned, the soft glow outlining his bare shoulders. His Bible lay open on the table, unread. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and wounded. "This isn't who I am." Tomowa swallowed, her throat dry. "Then who are you, Ezra? A man of God who forgot he was human? Or a man who finally remembered?" He turned, and for the first time since the storm, she saw it. The war in his eyes. Faith against desire. Guilt against truth. "I've broken my vow," he said, his voice almost trembling. "And I've dragged you into my fall." She rose slowly, the sheet still clinging to her body. "Don't make it sound like I didn't want this. I did. Every moment." Her voice softened. "You can repent tomorrow, but don't erase tonight." He stared at her, torn apart by the honesty in her tone. Then he closed the distance, his hand finding her face. Gentle, trembling, reverent. "You'll destroy me," he whispered. "Maybe you needed to be destroyed," she replied. The words hung heavy between them. Later, she dressed in silence while he stood in prayer. his hands trembling over his heart. His lips moved, but the words refused to leave. When she reached for the door, he called her name. Tamawa. He turned. He looked at her like a man standing on the edge of his own salvation. If I never see you again, he said softly, know that I've already seen heaven once, and it was last night. Her breath caught. She left without another word. Outside, the rain had washed the streets clean, but inside her, everything remained stained. The taste of him, the sound of his voice, the feel of holiness trembling under her hands. That night, in her small apartment, she tried to pray. She tried to wash her face, her lips, her body. But every drop of water felt like a reminder. He was still on her skin, still in her breath. When she finally crawled into bed, the moonlight traced her cheek. And the last thought before sleep came like a whisper from her own heart. If loving him is sin, then let me never be forgiven. The week passed like a shadow that refused to leave her skin. Tamawa tried to bury herself in work, painting faces, blending colors, smiling when she had to, but her thoughts kept slipping back to him. The man whose prayers turned into kisses. The man who worshipped by losing control. She hadn't heard from Ezra since that morning. But she felt him everywhere. In her dreams, in the songs at church, in the silence between her heartbeats. Guilt lived inside her now, but so did something darker. A longing that refused to die. Then one evening her phone buzzed. A message. Lady Ruth requests you at the house tomorrow. 10 a.m. Her heart dropped. She almost didn't go. But curiosity and fear were stronger than pride. The mansion felt colder that day, quieter. Ruth was alone in the living room, dressed in silk, her perfume heavy like smoke. She smiled warm but sharp. Tamawa, my husband speaks highly of you, she said. Tamawa's throat tightened. I'm honored, Ma. Are you? Ruth asked, tilting her head. He says you have a gift. That you make people see themselves the way God does. That's a rare power. To touch someone's face and make them feel reborn. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Tamawa nodded silently, pretending not to tremble. Ruth rose from the couch and walked closer, slowly, gracefully, like a queen circling prey. I've been married to him for 11 years, she said quietly. People think they know what that's like. They see the glory. They don't see the ghosts. Ruth stopped an inch away, lowering her voice. You know, my dear, every man of God has his wilderness. You just need to pray you're not the temptation that leads him there. The words landed like a slap wrapped in velvet. Before Tamawa could reply, Ezra entered the room. His sudden presence made her chest tighten. The sight of him, calm and perfect, standing beside his wife as if sin had never touched him. Ah, Ruth said, smiling sweetly. Speak of the angel himself. Good morning, Ezra murmured, but his eyes flicked briefly toward Tamawa. A single glance, heavy with memory and restraint. Ruth touched his arm. I was just telling your artist here how blessed we are to have her. You should thank her properly. I already have, he said softly. Silence followed, long, sharp, suffocating. When Ruth excused herself to answer a call, Ezra turned to Tamawa. His voice barely above a whisper. You shouldn't have come. You asked her to call me. I didn't know, he said, his tone breaking. She suspects something. She's watching. Then why are you still here? Her eyes glistened with hurt. Why keep pretending? Because if I leave, he said, I lose everything, the ministry, the home, the illusion that I'm still God's man. She stepped closer. And what about me? He swallowed hard. You were never part of the illusion. You're the truth I can't live with, or without. Their eyes locked, and for one dangerous heartbeat, the room disappeared. Then Ruth's footsteps echoed down the hallway, pulling them back to the mask of holiness they both wore. Tamawa turned, gathering her tools. You'll destroy us both, she whispered. Ezra's reply came like a prayer that refused to die. I already have. That night Tamawa couldn't sleep. The rain returned, tapping on her window as if mocking her. She sat in the dark, her heart torn between love and guilt. And for the first time she realized, There were two women trapped in that house. One wearing a wedding ring, the other carrying a secret. Both prisoners of the same holy lie. The days following her last visit to the mansion moved like shadows through fog. Slow, heavy, impossible to escape. Tomowa tried to drown herself in work, but her hands shook every time a man spoke in a deep voice, every time she smelled sandalwood. The memory of Ezra haunted her like a sin that refused to fade. Then one morning, as she scrolled through her phone, her heart stopped. Popular pastor resigns amid scandal. The article was everywhere. His face, his voice, his confession. He had stood before his congregation and said, "I have sinned not against God, but against truth. I have lived a lie that wore holiness like perfume. And I can no longer breathe inside it." They said people wept. Others walked out. The ministry split in half. But all she could think was, he finally did it. He'd chosen honesty, even if it cost him everything. Tomowa sat on her bed, phone trembling in her hands. For the first time in weeks, she cried. Not the tears of guilt, but of release. He hadn't mentioned her name, hadn't pointed blame, but every word in that confession felt like it was written for her. Days turned to weeks. She expected to see him on TV again, expected a statement, a public apology, but he vanished. No one knew where he went. The house was sold, Ruth left for London, and the world moved on as if holiness had never cracked in that marble palace. But Tomowa couldn't move on. Nights were the worst. Every raindrop against her window carried his voice. Every prayer she tried to whisper ended with his name. Then one afternoon 2 months later, her phone rang. A coordinator's voice said cheerfully, "We're holding a women's retreat this weekend. Private event. We'd love for you to handle makeup for our guest speaker." She didn't ask who it was. She just said yes. The venue was simple. Wooden floors, soft music, the scent of rain through open windows. She unpacked her brushes, preparing her kit, when a deep voice behind her said quietly, "Excuse me. Are you available now?" Her hands froze mid-motion. That voice. She turned slowly, and the air left her lungs. Ezra stood there. No designer suit. No ring. No pulpit confidence. Just a man. Plain shirt, rolled sleeves, eyes darker but freer. There was no spotlight on him now, no cameras. Just light streaming through the window that made him look almost human again. For a long moment neither spoke. Then she managed a whisper. "I thought I'd never see you again." He smiled faintly. "I thought I'd never deserve to." Her throat tightened. "You disappeared." "I had to," he said. "I needed to lose everything before I could find anything real. The ministry, the mansion, the mask. None of it mattered anymore." His eyes softened. "I spent years preaching about truth, yet I didn't know how to live it. Until you walked into my house and ruined my lies." Tomowa felt her heart ache in her chest. "You make it sound like I saved you." He stepped closer. "You did. The night you ran into my world, I was about to end my life. You became the proof that grace still exists, not on the altar, but in flesh and blood." Tears welled in her eyes. He reached out, fingers brushing her cheek. Gentle, trembling, reverent. "I don't want forgiveness," he whispered. "I just want you to see the man I've become without the robe, without the power, without the lie." She took his hand in hers, her thumb tracing his palm like she was reading a prayer written in his skin. "And what do you want from me now?" He smiled, small, honest. "A chance. Not to preach love this time, but to live it." The silence that followed was soft, sacred. Then she stepped into his arms. No fear, no guilt, no pretending. Just two broken souls who had finally stopped running from the truth. Outside, the sky darkened again, heavy with rain. He took her hand, leading her out beneath it. Water poured over them, washing the world clean, baptizing their wounds in silence. When he kissed her, it wasn't desperate like before. It was slow, certain, the kind of kiss that tasted like surrender. His hand cradled her face as thunder rolled in the distance, and he whispered against her lips, "This time I'm not asking God to forgive me for loving you. I'm thanking Him for letting me." And for the first time in a long time, Tamawa didn't feel like sin. She felt like salvation,